David Jolly, there is something fascinating about the depth of Pete Hegseth's sort of scandal and the scandal-driven coverage has blotted out the extremism coverage. And Courtney Kube was on the air a couple days ago when the two NBC News stories broke, one with the 10 sources talking about his drunkenness and his drinking at Fox News. The other was about the 6 senators being uncomfortable with his nomination, which is obviously too many senators to vote no for him to get through. And she made this point that she thought, having covered every nominee and candidate to be Secretary of Defense since Rumsfeld, she thought we'd be covering the things that made him extreme at a policy level. I wonder your thoughts about how we're 3 weeks in and we're already proving that we as a media are having a hard time chewing and walking gum.
Well, because I think Donald Trump's throwing 2 problems at us with each nomination. I mean, the Matt Gaetz one is a perfect example. There was the credible accusations of sexual misconduct, as well as the complete lack of experience. But then in the other lane, there was what would he do as Attorney General? Would he prosecute the enemies list and so forth? And so Gaetz is out, Bondi's in. Now all the personal fitness questions are largely set aside. There's still a question about the $25,000 check from Donald Trump that will come up. But now it isolates the question of Donald Trump's viewpoint of the Department of Justice. I think we're sitting on a similar spot with Pete Hegseth. There are all the questions, one, of a true lack of experience to run the Department of Defense. The personal scandals that are with him is one of the problems. The other problem then is what are the policy positions that he would bring as Secretary of Defense? And I think this is where he's going to run into a second brick wall with Joni Ernst, because the ideas that he has around women serving in combat, women serving in the military, Hegseth's idea of ending wokeness and ending DEI, what does that really mean for a diverse fighting force? And look, I think it's kind of obvious. This may or may not happen, but the leading theory certainly seems to be that Hegseth is now a dead man walking. And the only reason he's doing these meetings is because he can't cancel them. Trump can't cancel these Senate meetings because then that signals that the whole thing's falling apart. Yeah. So Hegseth, God bless him, is in this spot where he's got to go to these meetings that mean nothing while he's just waiting for the music to start for his own funeral. And, you know, rightly, Donald Trump would be now lining up an alternative. If you look at the Gaetz withdrawal, it was 4 or 5 hours to have the Bondi announcement right on the heels of that. Right. They can't have Hegseth withdraw without an announcement. Is it DeSantis, is it Ernst, or is it somebody else? But somebody else will likely be somebody who saves Donald Trump and sails through nomination, just like Bondi likely did to Gaetz.
And to almost disprove the point I was making about our challenges in covering all the things wrong with Hegseth, let me read you some new reporting in the New York Times, David Jolly. This is about his Christian extremism. Quote, before Trump picked him to lead the Department of Defense, Pete Hegseth spoke often about a medieval military campaign that he saw as a model for today. The Crusades, in which Christian warriors from Western Europe embarked on ruthless missions to wrest control of Jerusalem and other areas under Muslim rule. As Hegseth embraced a combative brand of Christianity in recent years, he wrote that people who enjoy the benefits of Western civilization should, quote, thank a crusader. In his book, Hegseth also offered a nod to the prospect of future violence. Quote, our American crusade is not about literal swords, and our fight is not with guns. Yet, end quote.
Yeah, Nicole, I think there's something really intriguing about this first round of cabinet picks that if people are paying attention anymore, it should really matter, which is these first round of cabinet picks really express the true ethos of Donald Trump. You know, in 2017, he picked people that were going to be leaders, Tillerson, Mattis, and others. And we were still figuring out how will Donald Trump govern, even though we had some strong clues from the campaign. Now you're just getting the pure Donald Trump in these picks, from Tulsi Gabbard and others, Matt Gaetz and on down. You're seeing exactly who he is. But I would tell you the silver lining in a lot of these nominees with scandal having to withdraw, and then we end up with, say, the Bondis and the DeSantises and others. It's not that they bring any less radical ideas about their government, but it is that now we get to isolate and focus in on their views of the Department of Defense, their views of the Department of Justice, their views on DNI. But now having nominees that aren't scandal-plagued because of allegations of sexual misconduct or alcohol abuse or lack of fitness or go down the list, those are a distraction in many ways going into a nomination hearing. Now when we get to focus on the role of governing under Donald Trump, let's get to the real scary parts of the next 4 years, I think there's benefit to the national conversation of seeing the second round of nominees like Bondi, like DeSantis and others. Not that they're less threatening to democracy per se in some of their views, but that we get to have a conversation about the raw danger that we might be facing under a Donald Trump administration.
It's such an interesting point, Basil. It's sort of about the distillation of Trump 2.0, which is something I think you were able to cover on the campaign trail in the reflection of this version of Trump from his supporters. It's something that this first sort of vomiting out of his impulses on appointments without, I mean, to their admission, without any vetting, without any process, it does give us this purest form of what retribution, I am your retribution, meant. Let me read you. There is some more new reporting that I want to share with our viewers. It's in the New York Times. Quote, Pete Hegseth's troubles at work raised questions about leadership. At Fox News, the network's Human Resources Department looked into Hegseth's conduct at the Fox and Friends Christmas party in 2016 and discussed it with him. According to a person with intimate knowledge who spoke anonymously, the following December, Hegseth got so drunk at a wedding of a Fox News producer that he struggled to stand upright in a men's bathroom, according to two people with direct knowledge of the episode who declined to be named for fear of retribution. Friends asked a producer who was there to get Hegseth a ride home so he could make it to the set by 6 a.m., they said. I would just introduce this other bit of reporting from Bob Woodward's book, War, about the last person, or the first person to have this job under Trump, former Secretary of Defense James Mattis. He'd been so worried that Trump would have a nuclear war with North Korea during his watch that he had slept in gym clothes, ready in an emergency to join a secure call to deal with the threat. Trump is, and again, it's not about Mattis, it's about how far Trump has traveled. From someone who took the responsibility so seriously, he slept dressed so that he wouldn't have to waste any precious time getting dressed for a secure teleconference, to someone who has to be propped up in the men's bathroom and driven around so that they can make it to their TV job.
And that's why right after his name was initially mentioned, a guy that lives near me, Marine, no longer on active duty, was very clear. He said, I know this guy. I know people that are still serving that have opinions of him. They don't like him. He is not going to be good. He's not going to be good for women. He's not going to be good for people of color. And we've seen that play out. I remember when I was here, maybe it was the last time I was here, and we were talking about RFK Jr. There was a moment where Donald Trump, in the same room at some kind of event, pointed to him and said, man, you're popular, but you don't need to get that popular.
Yeah.
And that really is everything you need to know about his psyche. He doesn't want to have to keep defending the people that he's appointing.
Right.
And what he wants to do is be the most popular person in the room. He wants everybody to be talking about him and no one that he's appointed. So I don't think that this is going to go very far. I do think this nomination's in jeopardy for exactly that purpose. Even if for nothing else, I think Trump is a teetotaler, so that might weigh in as well. But if for nothing else, he doesn't want to have to be talking about these folks. And I'd also add this piece. We haven't talked about the fact that the Heritage Foundation actually has a plan in place. And if Donald Trump isn't the person that specifically is going to execute that plan, the senators are, and these appointees are. And so they actually have a vested interest in having more serious people in these positions because they need to get something done. And I imagine that if it's not Heritage, there are other folks that are talking to the senators and saying, look, we have this 180-day plan. We can't do it with a guy who's not going to be there for 180 days, maybe not even 100. So, you got to, if you're going to stand up, you got to do it now. It's something we're not used to. We're used to seeing Lindsey Graham defending Donald Trump consistently. We're not actually used to seeing a lot of senators stand up to him, even as little as they are right now. But, that's where we are. And that's the challenge.
Let me just press back on that a little bit. Is it because they've suddenly grown a spine, or is it because they're so bad they have to?
No, it's not because they've grown a spine. It's because, number one, these folks are really bad. Ernest, in particular, is up in 2026, if I remember correctly. And so, look, they realize that they have to go back to face voters many more times than Donald Trump will ever have to,
and sooner.
And sooner. And so they've got to find a way to defend themselves. So I don't think it's for the people; it's for them.